The gym pulsed with life, a cacophony of grunts, laughter, and the rhythmic slap of bare feet against worn mats. Sweat hung heavy in the air, mingling with the faint scent of rubber and determination. In the center of it all stood a small figure, a 10-year-old girl, her oversized GI pants sagging around her tiny frame, her knuckles white as she gripped her white belt. The crowd of students, clad in crisp GIs of their own, formed a loose circle around her, their eyes glinting with curiosity and amusement. Whispers rippled through the group, punctuated by the occasional chuckle. Someone in the back held up a phone, the tiny red light of the camera blinking as it captured the scene. The girl stood alone, her face calm but her posture rigid, like a coiled spring waiting to snap. Coach Mark, a broad-shouldered man in his 40s with a black belt singed tight around his waist, swaggered forward. His smirk was wide, his voice loud enough to carry over the din of the gym. "All right, everybody, gather round. Looks like we've got ourselves a new grandmaster in town." He gestured toward the girl with a flourish, his tone dripping with mockery. The crowd erupted in laughter, a few students elbowing each other, their grins widening. Coach Mark's eyes gleamed with the confidence of a man who'd never been challenged in his own domain. "Come on, princess," he said, his voice syrupy. With condescension, "why don't you show us how to throw a punch? Lay it on me." The girl's gaze flicked up to meet his, her eyes steady, unblinking. Her voice was soft, almost a whisper, but it cut through the noise like a blade. "Are you sure you want me to?" The question hung in the air, simple yet loaded. A few more laughs broke out, sharper now, and the phone-wielding student zoomed in, eager to capture what they assumed would be a humiliating flop. But one figure in the crowd didn't laugh. An old man, his face weathered and his hands gnarled from years of training, leaned against the wall, his eyes narrowing. He muttered under his breath, barely audible, "That stance. I know that stance." The scene shifted, the gym fading into a memory bathed in the harsh sunlight of a military base. A younger version of the girl, no more than 7, stood on a dusty training ground. Her small frame was dwarfed by the towering figure of a military instructor, his face stern, his voice like gravel. She moved with precision, her tiny fists snapping through the air as she executed a series of strikes Krav Maga, Jiu-Jitsu, Muay Thai. Her focus was unrelenting, her discipline far beyond her years. The instructor watched her every move, his expression unyielding but laced with pride. "You don't talk," he said, his voice low and firm. "You move. Let your silence be your power." She nodded, her small face set with determination, absorbing every word like a sponge. Back in the gym, the memory dissolved, and the present snapped into focus. Coach Mark dropped into a fighting stance, his movements exaggerated, playful, like a cat toying with a mouse. "Okay, Cupcake," he said, chuckling. "Try to hit me. Go on, give it your best shot." The crowd leaned in, their laughter fading into eager anticipation. The girl didn't flinch. She took a slow, deliberate breath, her chest rising and falling. Her posture shifted, subtle but unmistakable. Gone was the nervous child clutching her belt. In her place stood something else entirely. A predator, tactical, precise. The gym's background noise seemed to fade, the chatter and clatter replaced by a sudden, eerie stillness. With a speed that defied her size, she exploded into motion. Her legs swept low, a blur of movement that caught Coach Mark's ankle, sending him stumbling forward. The crowd gasped, their smirks vanishing. Before he could recover, she fainted left, her body a flicker of controlled chaos. Then drove a clean lightning-fast strike to his sternum. The impact echoed, a sharp thud that silenced the room. Coach Mark grunted, his breath escaping in a wheeze as he doubled over. The girl didn't hesitate. She slipped behind him, her movements fluid, almost surgical, and locked in a rear naked choke. Her small arms tightened with a strength that seemed impossible, her face calm but focused, a mirror of the discipline she'd honed years ago. The gym was a tomb. No one spoke, no one moved. Coach Mark's face reddened, his hands flailing. Before he tapped frantically against her arm, she released him instantly, stepping back as he collapsed to his knees, gasping for air. A student in the crowd, his jaw practically on the floor, muttered, "Did she just submit him?" Another, still filming, stammered, "Bro, that's a black belt." The phone shook in his hands, the red light still blinking. The old man by the wall stood slowly, his eyes shining with something like reverence. "That's no ordinary child," he said, his voice low but carrying the weight of truth. The girl, unfazed, stepped back and peeled off her GI top. Underneath, her t-shirt bore a patch that gleamed in the gym's fluorescent light. Gold tier, International Combat Youth Champion. A worn duffel bag sat at the edge of the mat, a plaque peeking out from its open flap. World Combat Federation, Under 12 Champion, 3x winner. The crowd's eyes widened, a collective realization dawning. Coach Mark, still on his knees, clutched his ribs, his face a mix of pain and humiliation. "Why didn't you say anything?" he rasped, his voice hoarse. The girl's response was quiet, almost gentle. "You didn't ask." The simplicity of her words landed like a hammer. The old man approached her, his steps deliberate, his eyes searching, her face. "Your form," he said, his voice soft but firm, "military. Israeli discipline, correct. She nodded, her expression unchanged. My father trained me. The old man's lips curved into a faint smile. He raised a warrior. The silence broke as a single clap echoed through the gym, then another. Slowly, the students began to applaud, their hands coming together in a growing wave of respect. Even Coach Mark, his face still flushed, pushed himself to his feet and bowed, his arrogance replaced by something humbler. You've taught me something today, he said, his voice steady now. You've taught this whole room something more important than fighting. The girl didn't acknowledge the applause. She simply stepped off the mat, her movements quiet, purposeful. Before she reached the door, she glanced back, her eyes sweeping over the crowd now staring at her with awe, not mockery. Under her breath, she murmured, I didn't come to impress. I came to train. The door closed behind her with a soft thud, and the gym seemed to hold its breath. The old man's words lingered in the air, a quiet testament to the truth they'd all witnessed. It mocked her before they knew her story, but real strength doesn't need a spotlight, it speaks for itself. If that moment gave you chills, head over to MidnightTales on YouTube, drop a comment, and smash that subscribe button for more jaw-dropping stories of power and redemption. Let's keep the fire burning with tales that remind us, never underestimate the quiet ones. The story of the girl spread through the gym like wildfire, whispered in locker rooms and shared in group chats. She became a legend, not because she sought fame, but because she let her actions do the talking. On MidnightTales, we dive into stories like hers, moments where the underdog flips the script, where the unexpected becomes undeniable. Her victory wasn't just about a single fight. It was a lesson carved into the hearts of everyone watching. Strength isn't loud, it doesn't boast, it moves in silence, waiting for the moment to strike. Coach Mark never mocked another student after that day. He carried the memory of his defeat like a badge, a reminder to respect what he couldn't see. The students, too, changed. They stopped sizing up newcomers with smirks and started watching for the quiet ones, the ones who didn't need to prove themselves with words. The girl's plaque, glimpsed only briefly, became a symbol of what was possible. A child, barely tall enough to reach the heavy bags, had humbled a room full of fighters. And on MidnightTales, we celebrate that kind of power, the kind that doesn't need a megaphone to be heard. The old man, too, found himself reflecting on her. He'd trained for decades, seen countless fighters come and go, but her discipline, her focus, it was something rare. He thought of her father, the man who'd shaped her, and wondered what kind of warrior he must be to raise a daughter like that. On MidnightTales, we tell stories of mentors and warriors, of those who pass down not just techniques but a way of being. The girl's story was one of many, but it burned brighter than most, a reminder that true strength is forged in silence, tempered by discipline, and unleashed when the moment demands it. If you're still reeling from her story, join us at midnight on YouTube. Drop a comment with your thoughts. Did her quiet confidence give you chills? Subscribe for more stories that turn the tables, that show the world what happens when the underestimated rise. Let's keep telling tales that spark fire in your soul, tales like hers that prove the loudest victories are often the quietest.